The Edmonton Oilers picked up their most convincing win of the season, 5-1 over the struggling Nashville Predators down in Music City. We're going to talk all about it on today's edition of Locked On Oilers.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Friday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who's making Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And you can start the season with a big return over on FanDuel, today's presenting sponsor. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. So today's show, we're going to walk through the big takeaways from the Oilers' big win down in Nashville. We're going to touch on why this game had that air of desperation to it. Obviously, no McDavid, going to be no McDavid for at least the next 2 weeks or so. Then we're going to tackle why Drasaitl line looked so good tonight, what worked well for them, how well they played. And then our final segment, we're going to tie a bow on it, highlighting some smaller, lower down the lineup performances. We'll highlight Arvidsson and Hyman getting the monkey off their back, finally getting on the sheet. We'll talk about Pickard's strong performance. But tonight, and I want to be sure I make sure I say this, tonight was a real desperation win for the Oilers. It is really hard sometimes in the monotony of an 82-game regular season to get up for certain games, to show a level of desperation, especially as a team like the Oilers. And I know the Oilers are off to a very middling start. They haven't played particularly well. And though they won on the scoreboard very convincingly, they didn't play their cleanest game. A lot of mistakes, a lot of overpassing, a lot of individualistic play, which doesn't bode particularly well, but it was enough tonight against a struggling Nashville team. So the biggest takeaway is that the Oilers had the right type of desperation tonight, because in my mind, when we're talking about sports, there are two types of desperation. There's drowning desperation and there's hungry desperation. If you have drowning desperation, you are going to be in trouble, because you think about what the conditions are when you're drowning. You're usually alone. You're usually in open water. You don't know what's in the water around you. You don't know how long you're going to be able to tread water for. And eventually you're going to hit a physical wall, whether it's dehydration, whether it's fatigue, and you start to become increasingly more desperate, and you're flapping your arms and you're trying to kick your legs. And anybody who knows, if you're really trying to tread for as long as you possibly can, you want to be moving as slowly and effortlessly as possible to maintain a steady baseline. Because once you get frantic, once you get panicked, that's when you start to get into trouble in deep water. And when we're talking about hungry desperation, that's where people get resourceful. And this is as simple as sometimes it's getting food out of the garbage. Sometimes it's finding something else that someone left behind. Sometimes it's hunting, whatever it might be. And that'll bring out the smart in you. That'll bring out the creativity in you. You know, you prop up a box with a stick and you put a little something there to entice something nearby to maybe come under it. You pull the rope on the stick and you pull down the box and you trap something to eat. You know, there's a little ingenuity that comes with the hunger desperation. That's what the Oilers had tonight. They played with a real, genuine, we need to get off to a good start tonight. And they score very early in this game. Less than a minute into this game, they're on the sheet. You score less than a minute into a game, you are putting yourself in a good position to win the game. And it's especially nice that it was Arvidsson who was finally able to get his first goal of the season against a former team. He does a very nice job of being in the right place at the right time. Podkolzin does a lot of the dirty work on the far side of the ice, gets the puck to the middle. Draisaitl gets it even closer to the middle. And then ultimately, that puck ends up where it needs to. And that is a encouraging play for Arvidsson, because when you need one can feel like a million. When you have that donut next to your name for goals, it can feel impossible. There are guys who go whole seasons. You think about Riley Shahan, who was on the Red Wings for a lot of the last decade, and he went a whole season without a goal until the last game of the season. He finally got on the sheet. So when you are struggling, and we can even extend this idea to the Oilers at large, they were only averaging 2.2 goals per game coming into tonight. They had 22 goals in 10 games. Tonight, they got that total up to 27 goals in 11 games. That helps the average. Still a ways to go for where the Oilers need to be. But that level of desperation, and that's something that is noticeable. If you are looking, something that can track as far as desperation is your board play and your neutral zone play, because that is where effort comes through. Board play in particular, especially in the offensive zone, is all about effort. Can you win even if you don't have the numbers? If you're outnumbered 2-1 and you got the puck at the half wall and you're jamming at it, can you still find a way to leverage your way, wiggle your way in there, get that puck, get it where it needs to go? Podkolzin was able to, and I think that's the element that I like the most about Podkolzin's game and playing with Arvidsson and Draisaitl, is he's got that little bit of resourcefulness to him, that he can find a way to win these pucks, that he is not afraid to use his body, to use his leverage, to skate with velocity into hits, regardless of what's going to happen to him or the person he's hitting. And you need that kind of resourcefulness, frankly. You need that type of desperation, especially when you're a team that's struggling. Make no bones about it. The Oilers' record is not atrocious. Now that they've won tonight, they're sitting at 5-5-1. It's not awful, but very frankly, the Oilers are lucky to be 5-5-1. They do have quite a bit of work to do. But tonight, I think you saw a team that played with a little bit of, we know we're better than this. We need to come out here and really do something about it. And Nashville gets on the board back. The one Nashville goal, it's another penalty kill, a goal against the Oilers penalty kill. Once again, Kulak and Nurse struggling to communicate where a puck needs to go. Kulak tries to send it all the way down. It doesn't get 10 feet before Philip Forsberg intercepts it, and he rips one past Pickard. Nothing Pickard can do. I'm not going to blame the goalie there. But once again, Nurse and Kulak get caught kind of in a no man's land, and an in-between hop, if you will, where they don't know, should I go? Should I stay? And because Kulak hand grenades the puck, where he's just trying to get rid of it because it's like a pin-pulled grenade, that puck gets intercepted. And the Oilers penalty kill has a lot of work to do. It is frankly unacceptable that every single game the Oilers are seemingly conceding a penalty kill goal against. You cannot do that. And the Oilers are fortunate that Nashville is even more desperate than they are, because Nashville did them a lot of favors tonight. Nashville was atrocious in transition, couldn't string 4 passes together to save their lives. Nashville, for whatever reason, instead of trying to slow this game down and trying to grind Edmonton and force Edmonton to play defense, they turned this into an up and down track meet. And that's why if you look at the line splits for scoring chances for and against, the Draisaitl line had a very good night. The Noah Phillip, Drake Caggiula, Corey Perry line had a very good night, and the various permutations of those top 6 guys had good games. If you go and look, the Corey Perry, Noah Phillip, Drake Caggiula line was pretty good. The Podkolzin, Draisaitl, Arvidsson line was very good. And then the little doses of Corey Perry with Draisaitl and Arvidsson, Hyman and Draisaitl. But the lines that struggled tonight, Janmark, Henry, Connor Brown, and then Hyman, Nugent, Skinner. Those lines got outpossessed tonight, but the Oilers were able to convert their opportunities. I think the fact that Nashville was chasing a lot of this game made the scoring chance split as even as it was, where it ended up being 50-50 on the game, even though the Oilers had a big lead for most of the game. And those two stats are connected. When a team is playing with a big lead, they're more willing to concede scoring chances, because more often than not, if you're allowing the other team to shoot, it's not going to be particularly dangerous. So we're going to take our first break of today's show. We come back, we are going to talk all about the Arvidsson, Skinner, and Draisaitl line coming up next after this quick break. If you know anything about me in my time as the host of Locked On Oilers, you know I love going to the events, whether it's games, whether it's concerts, whether it's comedy shows. I am always out there doing stuff. Last weekend, I was at Notre Dame Navy at MetLife Stadium. In a few weeks, I will be at AEW Full Gear at Prudential Center, and the only place I buy tickets to go to games, to go to shows, is through our friends over at Gametime, with some of the best features in the ticket buying experience. My personal favorite, the seat view, where you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. If you're going to an Oilers game, you're buying tickets, you want to get a good idea of where you're sitting, what the view of the game is going to be, click on the tickets in the app and you get a full panoramic view. The lowest price guarantee, or Gametime, will credit you 110% of the difference, and Gametime ticket coverage, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers as we head on into the weekend with the Oilers back in the win column. And look, you can't pick who you play. You can't pick how well you play. And there will be some conjecture about, well, they beat Nashville. Do you want to give them credit for beating Nashville? And I understand Nashville's not playing very well right now. And Nashville, it looks like a group of individuals as opposed to a team. A lot of standalone individual plays as opposed to guys within a system trying to facilitate functional play. And I think Nashville will probably figure it out just because of the volume of talent on this team, whether you're talking about UC Saros, Brady Shea, Roman Josi, Marchessault, Stamkos, Forsberg. They have more than enough talent to get by. It just hasn't come together for them yet. And the Oilers are still dealing with this to a lesser degree themselves, trying to figure out the optimal deployment of the various pieces on their team. I think you saw a little bit of that tonight, where you saw three different guys rotate in the minutes when Podkolzin was in the penalty box after his fight, where you saw Perry get in there, you saw Skinner get in there, and you saw Connor Brown get a little look in there. And with that in mind, I do want to highlight the fact that Podkolzin is so willing to be physical. He is so willing to forecheck. It opens doors for the rest of that line. And I know coming into the season, the Oilers' plan was to start Skinner over there, and they were going to go two top lines of pure skill. And I still think in the long run, Skinner probably ends up being more useful to the Oilers this year than Podkolzin does. But I think Podkolzin sticking with Draisaitl, especially now without McDavid, where they've effectively put McDavid and they've put Nugent-Hopkins in the McDavid spot, slid that line down, and they're really trying to figure out how to get Leon going. And tonight was a good sign. You got Leon 2 tucks, you got Arvidsson a goal, you got Podkolzin in the mix. He had the fight. He got an assist on one of the goals. He looked good tonight. And Podkolzin is a very noticeable player. And hockey's not like other sports where being noticeable in hockey sometimes is a bad thing, where if somebody's really sticking out, it can mean they're really making a lot of mistakes. But for someone like Podkolzin, if you're not actively watching just him as the play is developing, there will be long stretches of the game where he's away from the puck. He is going after where the puck is going to be. He's in on the forecheck. He's just out of the frame because the puck moves before he got there. He puts in a lot of skating. He puts in a lot of distance. He is on it. He's got a high motor, and that type of player is very useful. You know, I forget what person I used to read and put this terminology in my brain, but it's effectively telling a dog fetch. You know, they throw the tennis ball and the dog goes and gets it. The puck's in deep. Podkolzin's going to get it, because if he can get it, he can get it to Leon. And then Leon can score from anywhere, or Leon can get it to whoever they're playing with. In tonight's case, you saw it on the Arvidsson goal. Podkolzin jams up at the half wall. Leon makes himself available to receive the pass. Leon cuts to the middle, and he finds Arvidsson for a tap-in. And it's really nice when you're able to get your line working the way it's supposed to. And in an ideal world, that's the perfect dynamic. You know, you've heard me talk about this a lot. If you're familiar, you listen to the show often. You want to have a little bit of everything on every line, and this line has it. You know, you want some forechecking, you want some skating, you want some playmaking, you want some shooting, and you want some net front. In an ideal world, you have your distributor, you have your shooter, you have your retriever. Every line should have those three things. If you're watching on YouTube and you saw me hold up 2 fingers, no, you didn't. I held up 3. You want those 3 things on every line because that's balance. And then tonight, Leon had the added bonus of getting his minutes with Evan Bouchard and Matthias Ekholm. And I don't think we do a good enough job, and I'm guilty of this as well, of just talking about how important defensemen are and as far as maintaining zone time and really accumulating scoring chances. Because when you are out there with defensemen who cannot really handle the puck well, you're almost playing 4-on-5 or 3-on-5 at times where you can't really incorporate your defensemen into your cycle because you're wary of the decisions they're going to make, whether it's taking a bad shot or not having the skills with the puck on their stick to get it where it needs to go. Those are real conundrums that these players have to grapple with. And in the past, 13 months, the Oilers, for the most part, have played Ekholm and Bouchard with McDavid. That has been Chris Knobloch's strong outlook, that he wants those 5 guys. He wants Hyman, he wants McDavid, Ekholm, Bouchard, and then whoever the 5th guy is. This year it's Nuge. At various points last year, it was different guys. They want to have that 5-some together as much as possible because in those minutes, they can generate close to 70% of the expected goals and the high danger chances and score a whole heck of a lot of goals. And yes, does that leave you a little top heavy where your second and third pair are out there with Draisaitl and Leon has bad goal splits because of that at times? Yes. I said that a lot during the Vancouver series in the playoffs last year, because in the early stages of that series, the Oilers were losing Leon's minutes in terms of actual goals. Sure, they were having enough scoring chances to keep it close, but they weren't actually putting the puck in the net. And this year, coming into tonight with Draisaitl on the ice with Darnell Nurse, the Oilers have been outscored 0-3. And that was the most significant defenseman that Leon had played with so far this season was Nurse, whether it was with Dermott, whether it was with Emberson, whether it was with Stetcher, that was his most common partner. And when you have someone like Nurse, who is just frankly struggling, and this frankly might be who Darnell Nurse is at this phase of his career, where you just can't count on him to move the puck, you can't count on him to block shot, you really can't depend on him to do a whole lot. So that puts a lot more pressure on the forwards because if you're in your own zone and the puck is behind your net, you're going to need to come back further because Nurse isn't going to be able to hit that stretch pass. He's not going to be able to get the puck to you if you're 30, 40 feet away from him. So you need to come back further, which means you need to skate further to break out of the zone. And again, Nashville was desperate tonight, so they were pinching a little more aggressively in the offensive zone, which gave the Oilers lanes to those longer passes that haven't necessarily been there, especially because they've been playing from behind. When you are playing from behind, teams are going to be a lot more passive on their forecheck because if you try that long stretch pass, you try and get it 50 feet in one pass, they will step up, they will stop you, and you will have to regroup. Tonight, because Nashville was playing from behind for a good chunk of this game, they were the ones who had to whip that long pass. The Oilers stepped up, prevented that long outlet pass, and forced Nashville to regroup. And then in the other end, same exact thing. Nashville comes really far up because they are trying to stop the Oilers' breakout. But because of that, they are more susceptible to that long over-the-top pass. It's the same thing if you're familiar with football with press coverage. Yeah, if you jam them right away at the line of scrimmage, you're going to be able to prevent them from getting off. But the longer you expect someone to hold that coverage, the more difficult it's going to be for them to maintain it, because once you get that initial press at the line of scrimmage, all that receiver's got to do is get around them, and then they're off. And that's effectively what you saw from Nashville tonight. They came up very aggressively. They were trying to get into 4-on-3s and play tight in a phone booth, and the Oilers got the puck around them, and there were a lot of 3-on-2s and a lot of 2-on-1s where the Oilers just kept funneling the puck at the net, crashing traffic in front of Saros, making Saros play a lot of goalie, and the Oilers won those minutes. So we're going to take one more break on today's show. We're going to come back. We'll talk about Pickard. We'll talk about Arvidsson. We'll talk about Hyman. We'll set you up for the Battle of Alberta on Sunday night, coming up next after this quick break. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you the everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. This weekend in the NFL, the big games, Dolphins going up to Buffalo, the Dolphins 5.5-point road underdogs, the Detroit Lions heading up to Green Bay to take on the Packers. The Lions are 2.5-point road favorites. And then Monday Night Football, rematch of the Super Bowl from a couple of years ago, Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Kansas City to take on the still undefeated Chiefs. The Chiefs 8.5-point home field favorites. Head on over to FanDuel.com. You can get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Friday edition of Locked On Oilers, where we are looking to the second battle of Alberta on Sunday night. The Oilers looking to start building. And I said this during the week, earlier in the week, but the longer it takes you as a team to start building it out, the harder it is to lock in at the right time. Because conceptually, if you will, it doesn't work exactly like this, because sometimes there are setbacks during the course of a season. You have injuries, you have slumps, you have underperformances. But to win the Stanley Cup, you need to peak at the right time. You need to be playing your best hockey going into the middle of April through June. And to get to that level, you got to start at the ground level. There's building and building and building and building. And right now, the Oilers are still in the early stages of figuring out where they're going, what they still need, what they need to improve. And tonight is a good start. Like I said, Nashville did them a lot of favors. I think the Oilers were very sloppy defensively, and Nashville just wasn't able to convert them in a way that some of the teams the Oilers have struggled against so far this season have. You know, I've talked an awful lot on the show this season so far about the fact that because the Oilers aren't scoring enough, their defense is taking an outsized role in the outcome of these games. And because of that, they aren't prepared for the moment, because the Oilers aren't built to be a defense and goaltending team. I think Stuart Skinner is a pretty solid goalie. He's not somebody you're going to bank on to carry your team. That's just not how... That is not his style. He is not a Connor Hellebuck, Saros Shesterkin, Saros Vasilevsky. I said Saros twice, excuse me. He's not that type of bell cow guy where you're going to give him 65 starts and you're going to give the other 17 to 20 to the other guy. You're going to need Calvin Pickard to probably give you close to 30 starts, in all honesty, if you want to get the most out of Skinner come playoffs. But I thought Pickard was outstanding tonight. He made quite a few high quality saves. I think him bouncing his numbers up, and I think the Oilers at large, their save percentage will begin to come up as their defense begins to solidify, because ultimately those two things are inherently tied together. As much as we want to say, well, the defense needs to be better, the goaltending needs to be better, it's going to be a lot harder for the goaltending to be better if the defense can't be better. And the defense is not that good. Talent-wise, it is not that good. It is very unproven, I should say. I shouldn't say it's not good. I should say it's unproven. Emberson, Stetcher, Dermott, those three guys, you know, Emberson, less than 50 NHL games. Stetcher's been moonlighting as a 7th D for a while, and Dermott has 200 some odd games as an NHLer, like 8 years into his career. So those are two fringe NHL guys, and Emberson, who hasn't played a lot of hockey. So when you add that together, there are going to be a lot of hiccups. There are going to be a lot of bumps. And I assume as the season goes on, that will begin to figure itself out. I do want to highlight the fact that Corey Perry, Noah Phillip, and Drake Caggiula had a great game tonight. Them and the Leon Drasaitl line were the two positive possession lines of the lines that played a good chunk of the minutes. The Caggiula, Perry, and Phillip line, I forgot Noah Phillip. They played 5 minutes at 5-on-5. They won their minutes, 11 scoring chances for, 3 against. They had the goal, the Corey Perry goal, his first of the season, Noah Phillips' first career point. They had 89% of the expected goals, and they had 100%. They had all of the high danger chances in the minutes those guys were on the ice. Outright dominant bottom 6 performance from the fourth line. I thought Noah Phillip brought a lot of energy. He was very noticeable. He was in and around the puck. I thought Drake Caggiula did a reasonable enough job on the forecheck, getting pucks where they needed to go. And Perry had a lot of looks tonight. And Corey Perry's weird because when you see a guy who used to be great and they're a fringe player, especially in hockey, it's hard to wrap your mind around it because Corey Perry is in the net front, around the net front, 2 or 3 times a game, and the puck ends up at his skates. And I think about the Corey Perry of 10 years ago, who was one of the best players in the world, represented Canada, multiple Olympics, World Junior gold medalist, Hart Trophy, 50 goals. I think about what that Corey Perry would have done with these scoring chances. And the body doesn't match the brain anymore. He thinks faster than he can play. He has to actively think about these things because he can't be as instinctual because he's not as athletic as he used to be. But tonight, I thought he did a nice enough job trying to get the offense going. I thought it was very amicable down the back half of the game, how they kept trying to get the puck to Noah Phillip to set him up for his first career NHL goal. I think that is something that goes a long way with these young guys. And I'll tie a bow on the thought with Phillip by tying in Podkolzin. We could throw Caggiula in here. We can throw Emberson, Stetcher, Dermott, all of those fringe guys who are, I don't want to say not steady or not established, but guys who have something to prove. All of those guys playing well and getting rewarded with ice time and opportunities to stay in the lineup, that means a lot to people like that. For fringe guys who want to know where they stand, what they can do to stay in the lineup, it is really important that you give them a positive feedback system of you played well, you stay in the lineup. You play well, staying in the lineup, you get more opportunities. Maybe you get to kill penalties. Maybe you get to go up into the top 6 if we have an injury down the line. That goes a long way with guys in building trust and building confidence. That matters. And I do want to shout out Arvidsson and Hyman both getting on the sheet for goals tonight. Coming into tonight, Victor Arvidsson had 0 goals. He is a 10.9 career shooting percentage player, 4.3 shooting percentage coming into tonight. Hyman, 3.47 expected goals for, individual expected goals for. He had no goals coming into tonight. His 1 goal put him at 4.17 shooting percentage, which is about a third of his career shooting percentage. So those guys are both due to get some goals. I'm not saying they're going to go, they're not going to do the Mike Bossy 50 and 50, but Hyman will get going now. Arvidsson will get going now. And I can tie a nice bow on this episode by going back to what we said at the outset in the first segment. When you have a 0, 1 feels like a lot. Now you got 1 goal in 10 games. You multiply that rate based on how many you would have in 82 games, but your shooting percentage begins to tick up. You start to put more in, you get some bounces. All of that makes it where you feel a little bit better. It's important they get those guys going. That'll do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. I will talk to you guys after the second Battle of Alberta of the 2024-2025 NHL season. Thank you for making Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. For your second listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the show. Leave us 5 stars if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. I'll talk to you guys. Probably it'll be Monday morning after the Sunday night Oiler Flame game. Talk to you guys then. Everyone have a fun and safe weekend.